shutting this whole thing down and I'm bringing you home. How do I do that?
Welcome to Decoding TV's coverage of Fallout Season 2 on Amazon Prime Video. So we have been reviewing this show in fits and starts over on the Decoding TV podcast, but I wanted to publish this on YouTube as well to talk about our overall reflections on the season. Now that we've seen all 8 episodes, Patrick Klepek, what did you think of Fallout Season 2? And in particular, compared to Fallout Season 1, which is our only other frame of reference.
just a guttural.
Wow.
I think where I sit with Fallout as a television show now is that I was so surprised by the first season that I kind of ranked it a couple tiers higher than. It's like, wow, this is this kind of show. Like, it's managing to be like funny and touching and interesting and thoughtful, and just I would have expected less from a Fallout show and still had a good time. But it was like so much better than I was expecting.
It nailed it. I
was like, man, like some shows take a couple, a season or two to kind of figure out the right mix. Like they got the alchemy right straight off the bat. Can't wait to see what happens in season 2. And instead I end up with the end of season 2. Is this a show that I will stop watching? No. Is it a show that has now become one that, like, am I getting distracted on my phone sometimes, like, while it's on because I'm just having trouble paying attention? Yes. Like, this is a show that has, like, gone from sort of an elevated television series that I had, like, really high expectations for to, like, oh, well, that was a good hang. And, like, there's nothing wrong with that. Lots of shows are just, like, fine and a good hang. I just expected more. I wanted more. And I think this season is a real dip. I think it makes it doubles down on all the things I was frustrated about over across the season, which was splitting characters up in directions that don't let them recapture some of the best dynamics of the first season, briefly flirts with getting away from that, and then makes choices plot-wise. It's like, well, I guess they'll never see each other again, sort of stuff. And so I think there's some really great performances across season 2. I really like all of the actors in this show. Yeah. I think it looks incredible. Like the production design, the visual effects, like so much of Fallout is just like top of the board, really great stuff. And I just think the scripts, the plotting really lets everybody down. I think it's a catastrophic mistake to not have more of like Justin Theroux like throughout this season. Like you introduce one of the most interesting villains in the Fallout universe into this show and give them like one sequence in a villain's lair to like be spectacular and gesture at like a different show where he was around all the time being interesting. It's just, I'm not mad. I'm disappointed. It's like sort of the vibe I have. It's like, I expected more. I wanted more. And I guess that's just not what this show is anymore. And we'll always have season 1, but I don't know that it's ever going to get back to that level again.
I mean, I 100% agree with pretty much every single thing you said. I actually think you might be going a little easy on the show. I think season 2 has been a pretty big disappointment, and that is a big bummer. There have been many ingredients that are cool. Many individual sequences that are cool, and of course all the actors are wonderful. Like I think they did a great job casting the show in season 1, and Robert House is a solid addition. This season has suffered from, I think, a huge lack of narrative momentum. No reason to kind of tune in every week. No reason to be like, what's going to happen on this specific character's journey every week. Like I think they've tried to set like all these dominoes in motion simultaneously of like, here's Norm's storyline and here's Steph's storyline and here's, Lucy's storyline.
Everyone ends up in the same place.
Pretty
David?
much. Yeah. Not necessarily everyone, but a lot of them. And the problem is like none of them were particularly compelling is the problem. And then the show also wasted a lot of time with flashbacks that, in my opinion, were basically completely extraneous. I mean, we already know that they failed to prevent the bad thing from happening, right? So then it's like, okay, so then the bar is pretty high for doing a flashback to like all of Cooper's machinations and stuff because we already know what the outcome is. So like, okay, why are you taking us back? And I don't think the stuff we got out of it was worth the massive amount of time that was spent on all the flashbacks.
It should have been a single flashback episode that condensed all that
do it
information
all once.
into one thing, as opposed to all this.
I don't even know if you needed that much personally. Like I guess we learned a few things. Like we learned about Congressman Welch and stuff, but like
it would have felt less. It just would have felt just structurally less like episodic padding if it was like, hey, this is the episode that's going to fill in this big narrative gap in the past. I can live in this world and the spectacle. Like it just felt like it just condensed into a singular place. I agree with you. Would have had many of the same like overall problems, but it just felt every episode we're jumping in like, great, we're going to fill up 15 minutes with like Walton Goggins like scowling, in old Vegas.
I think another big issue with the season is it didn't do a good job of making these other factions compelling, right? Like you have Kaisar's Legion, you have Brotherhood of Steel and the different sort of factions within it. And I'm not saying that is an easy task. Like that's actually hard. I think it's a hard task to be like, hey, I'm invested in whether Kaisar's Legion is going to be a big deal in this world. That's difficult to do. Some shows have done that well. I would say like a Game of Thrones has done that pretty well, right? Where like, oh, there's all these different factions that each have their own look. And like, I care about whether that Legion or faction succeeds. I care if the NCR succeeds, the show did not succeed at doing that. And I think that's a big problem because then what ends up happening is for this finale, it's just a bunch of stuff happening. Like that's kind of what it feels like. It's like the NCR shows up and saves the day from the death clause. It's like, okay, was I hoping that would happen? Like was I feeling like tension waiting for that to happen? Like
this isn't like the Riders of Rohan like coming in like, my God, like we're here to save the day. Who are these guys?
I think you're supposed to feel something. You don't need to feel as that extreme what you just said, like that triumphant, but like it should be something. And instead I'm just like, yeah, okay, my reaction is, okay, I guess that's fine. Which is my reaction to a lot of stuff that happened in the episode. So, all right, let's talk about it. Let's get into the episode. First of all, I do want to read this email from Brian writing into decodingtv@gmail.com. Brian writes in, love your breakdowns and analysis of the shows I love. I do want to point something out that you seem to be missing. In your breakdown of Fallout Season 2, Episode 7, both of you treat the Enclave as being a faction that is to be being introduced to the show late in the season, and you wonder who can be the face of the Enclave going forward. Patrick, in particular, thinks they will need an actor with a lot of charisma, but the Enclave was introduced in Season 1. They were the ones who had the cold fusion diode, and it was stolen by Wilzig, played by the amazing Michael Emerson. Now, technically, he defected from the Enclave when he stole the diode, but the Enclave has been there from nearly the beginning, and he showed up again in flashbacks, giving orders to Barb at Vault-Tec. Anyway, huge fan, and I'd be happy to subscribe once you move off of Substack. Noted, Brian. Thank you very much. End quote. That comes from Brian writing to decodingtv@gmail.com. Anyway, thank you, Brian. That's great clarification. Yes. The Enclave was introduced in Season 1. Sorry, we got that a little mixed up. If we did. And then, I would say the show...
I'm not sweating my comments. I get like you're correct. And also I'm correct.
I would say the show hasn't done you would know, Patrick, like, do you feel like the show has done a good job of depicting the Enclave? We definitely see more of them in the finale, right? Like we see the Enclave and the building. Like my understanding is Steph radios in with her Pip-Boy to the Enclave. That's my interpretation.
Yeah. I mean, it's how can you say the Enclave has been fleshed out in this show? Like it's all just a setup for Season 3. Like all we get is a shot. No, like it is clearly meant to be, a pullback to like, oh, the evil guys are actually the surface is
Hank
the real.
is just a puppet, basically.
Okay, now I will say I was going to make fun of the surface is the real experiment.
The surface is the experiment, not the vaults.
And actually, that was a pretty cool line. Actually,
yeah.
That was pretty good. That was pretty good. Actually, I was sitting there like a lot of things I didn't like about this season, but like
that was a good
right.
moment. Now, what does that mean?
Right.
Who knows? Anyway, I do want to call that out. Thank you for clarifying that. And but I would say that, like with other factions, I don't think that the show's depiction of the Enclave has been particularly compelling this season. So, all right, let's talk about some of the stuff that happened in the episode. In the Fallout Season 2 finale, Macaulay Culkin takes charge of the Kaisar's Legion and leads them on a conquest into Vegas. So that's a thing that as with a lot of things, that happened. Sure, that's a thing that happened. I don't know that the show. I'm going to put it out there. I think the show did a bad job with Kaiser's Legion. I don't think the show did a particularly good job like attaching emotional stakes to what happens to the Legion. Personally, Patrick,
I mean, there's just a lack of time spent
Yeah.
meaningfully. Like, look,
yeah, agreed.
I think when we watched season 1, it was like, all right, this Brotherhood of Steel like stuff isn't really doing much for me, even though I like this character that's at the heart of it. But you can't accuse the show of like not spending time with the Brotherhood. Like it
Right.
invested real capital
Yes,
and screen
agreed.
time resources
Agreed.
into a storyline I found to be extremely boring. But it was so like I can lay a fault at the show's feet for that, but it's not because of a lack of like real estate spent on it. Season 2 ups the ante on the number of factions and does not spend like it's one thing if like, hey, we're setting up Kaiser's Legion as like the new faction of season 2, and we're going to spend the first half of the season stuck in this camp and around this camp. Nothing like that happens. We get the NCR and we get the Kaiser's Legion. And it's just, how can you feel anything about any of them that isn't you bringing baggage from the show and projecting that on to it? I'd be fascinated to hear if anyone wants to write in who has no history with the series and how do these factions strike you? Like, do they seem as shallow as it seems to me, given how they're presented in the series? Because when I read like message board threads, trying to like, all right, I finished the show, I want to kind of see how other people thought about it. Yeah, I gotta be honest, I'm having a much different reaction than a lot of people are having when I'm reading about it. But also, I feel like, where did you get that from the show? I feel like you're getting that from your hundreds of hours in the video game.
Right. That they're transposing a lot of their existing knowledge into the show,
which is fair. Except that I thought what season 1 did a much better job of was you got more out of something if you had the history, but the lack of history didn't make you feel like you were left behind or lacking context. And I think season 2 just sort of like it's less that you won't understand what's going on as much as like you just don't have time to be emotionally invested without, I think, the baggage of having played the games. Like that's my
agreed.
my sense of it.
100%. I agree 100%. But let us know what you thought at decodingtv@gmail.com. Okay. What else happens this episode? Well, the last episode concluded with Lucy entering this mainframe where she sees Congressman Diane Welch's head hooked up to everything. And then Diane Welch says, "Kill me," and then Lucy kills her. But Lucy's dad reveals he wanted to use her personality to improve on Robert House's mind-controlled people. And in fact, that's why they hooked her up. And like, I like the execution from a makeup, technology, visual effects, special effects, whatever it was perspective. Like, it looked really cool. And like, whole kill me thing. Like, I think I'm just confused because I'm like, why?
Like, why? I genuinely
like,
did I miss
were we
a
supposed to
scene?
like? Is this like everything? Is there something like unfortunately ironic about Diane Welch doing this because of everything she stood for before? Like I don't know that the show did a good job of setting up like
Why her?
why her, and well, it's because she has all these lovely characteristics.
They
right?
couldn't have gotten an anonymous person that works in Vaultex, like building to that. They had to get the Congresswoman.
I guess there's supposed to be something deliciously ironic about the fact that she tried to prevent all this from happening, and then they used her to like enable it to happen, right? And like she was sympathetic to Cooper's mission and tried to stop Robert House, if I'm understanding this correctly.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, but then they used her to like actually make this nightmare come true, and it's like, okay, yeah, sure, like I guess that's kind of painfully ironic, but it's I think a reveal like that should feel somewhat satisfying. Like, oh wow, like that's why she's in the story, but I don't think we got there.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, Hank wants to miniaturize the tech further to make the people indistinguishable from normal humans. Unclear how that will happen without Diane Welch's head, and how they're gonna do it. But anyway, and then there is a scene where Lucy orders Hank outside, and Hank reveals the surface is the experiment, not the vaults. I've already sent my R&D into the wasteland. Their boxes, you can't even see them. And before he can explain further, Hank presses a button to wipe out his own memory. Lucy then realizes she is alone in the wasteland, but Maximus shows up and they reunite. I have to say, this was the one moment in the episode that I actually felt something emotional, because these characters have been apart basically all season. They had like a really good relationship in season 1, and they've been apart all season. They've both been through a lot, and they finally come together. It's like, okay, that's kind of a nice moment. I like that. I mean, the show had to like twist itself into story pretzels to get to that point, but it was still like kind of cool. I like that.
And it's carried by 2 really wonderful actors. Like,
Yes,
I think like
yes.
you're able to in the like, it's when we sit here and talk about it on the podcast, it's like, wait a second, like, how did we get to this moment? But like in that sequence, you're just locked in with these 2 characters going through it. And I think it's a real testament to, again, the tremendous acting, like kind of across the board in the show, that can ground you in a moment as kind of nonsensical as that.
Yeah. I do want to give a shout out to the moment last episode when Lucy says to Hank, one side is murdering people, enslaving them, crucifying them, and the other side is just vaguely problematic. And I'll just say, sounds familiar. Sounds familiar. Anyway, so the ghoul shows up, plugs in cold fusion into the Robert House's thing, and Robert House's digital version comes to life, and the ghoul agrees to keep Robert House alive in exchange for the location of his family. And so then he gets the location, and then he shows up, and the family is not in the cryopods. Patrick Klepek, they're in Colorado. Literally, it's the exact same ending as season 1 with the ghoul, right? It's like, oh, the family is actually somewhere else, Colorado instead. So, like, visually, the ending is very, like, I think we see the Colorado mountains in the background at one point. Like, visually, the ending is very similar to season 1. It feels like the ghoul's plotline has advanced not at all the entire season.
And takes us so drastically away from our other characters who, at the same beat, are watching as like a war is about to erupt in New Vegas. Like, how are these?
And as we discussed, the best parts of the show were when like the ghoul and Lucy are together, or the ghoul and Thaddeus are together for like 5 minutes this season. And so now it seems like it's impossible for them to be together for most of the next season.
Or again, we're going to be, or a similar structure, right? Like everyone's going to be on a side quest until there's a reason for. I am sure the ghoul and Lucy, this is not the last that they have seen each other, but it seems more than likely that is something that happens in the second half of season 3 of Fallout than any sooner, and that is unfortunate.
A couple of other things happen in the episode. Back in the vaults, we see Steph open up Hank's case. We learn, by the way, that Steph and Hank actually were married. Huge shock. And Steph opens Hank's case, and inside is one of those Pip Boys. Steph puts it on. She identifies herself as Hank's wife, and she transmits to the Enclave, initiate phase 2.
If you can hear this, initiate phase 2.
I'll have more to say about that at the end of the episode, where there's possible spoilers for future episodes of the show. But initiate phase 2. There's a scene where before Norm can be executed, cockroaches break out and kill everyone. So that's a thing that happens in the episode as well.
Pretty good.
Yeah, pretty good. Like, those are pretty adequately horrifying. And yeah, so it was kind of a big twist that Steph linked up with Hank to get a place in the vaults before the events of most of the show. So just want to put that out there. Cool twist, I guess. Kind of like curious more what the implications of that twist are, but like feels like just it comes out of nowhere, and that's it for this episode.
Yeah, the show doesn't spend a ton of time back in the vault, but in a season in which time was precious to be spread out, you're telling me there wasn't another way we could have done the introduction of the Enclave and phase 2 than this? It just feels like there was. It would have been time better spent.
I was going to say
elsewhere.
Another introduction is like, I actually thought the Steph stuff was pretty cool from the last episode, where we learned, she was actually broke into Canada and all this other stuff. And,
it's pretty late in the game. You know what I mean? Like, it's just
very late. I agree.
Like, and it's like that alongside this other group of unfrozen vaultees that, like, well, what happened there? Like, well, it all amounted to he looked at a computer and it said FEV. Like, that's all that plot line amounted to. That's it.
Yeah.
It was like precious minutes spent so he could look at a computer screen and it could say FEV.
So, that is basically that. There is a post-credit scene where Quintus is upset that he tried to unify the Brotherhood and reveals that Quintus the Uniter is gone and Quintus the Destroyer is here, or something along those lines. And he has the blueprint for something called Liberty Prime Alpha, which in the games, very minor spoiler, but I assume you're listening because you want to hear stuff like this, is one of the most powerful combat robots ever. Patrick Klepek, do you have any?
It's a giant mech.
Yeah. Do you have any associations or connotations with Liberty Prime Alpha?
Yeah, it's cool as hell. Like, it's one of the like, it doesn't make any doesn't make sense. Don't worry about it.
Like,
Wouldn't
it doesn't physically make sense as an object or something.
Yeah,
right?
wouldn't it be cool if there was a giant mech in this universe? Yeah. I think that would be pretty cool. So I guess they're gonna do that. I presume that is going to be at some point we will get a scene in season 3 of this mech descending upon New Vegas, which does sound. Maybe House can make his own competing giant mech, and we can get a kaiju battle at the end of season 3.
Any other thoughts, Patrick, on season 2 of Fallout? I do want to talk a little bit about what the Enclave is trying to do and like speculate on that a little bit, but like
sure,
yeah.
I get.
But anything else about like this episode or I forgot to mention Thaddeus and Maximus face off against the Death Claws, and that's cool.
That was pretty cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was a decent action sequence.
Yeah, decent. Yeah.
I think it's become apparent. Like, Justin Theroux's performance as House was probably my favorite addition this season, and I wish there had been more instances of him being able to be an active participant in the show, and not confined to a villain's lair. And so the flicker of at the very end of the episode when it says like connection lost or whatever, as Lucy and Thaddeus are looking over as Kaiser's Legion are approaching, briefly you see Digital House on there, and there was a question posed to I believe one of the showrunners at a recent press event over, is there any House has access to all sorts of things, like, is there any world where like he could get himself back in a body? And they said that's a very interesting question, which has me hoping and praying that there'll be some way to get. This would salvage being stuck in New Vegas again for me, is like, if we lose the ghoul, but gain like Justin Theroux as like a physical presence, like in that plot line, like, I'm back in, baby. Like, I'm back in. Like, just
maybe let's just get Robert House as a head, like.
Hey, whatever. Oh my God, walk around with a talking head. Yeah, look, just
Diane Welch style.
Yes.
Anyway,
So that's my only thought. But no, I'm disappointed. I really wanted much more from this season, and what we got was a perfectly like okay turn your brain off like episode, like season of television. And I think a lot of our like perhaps harsher than the show deserves tone is because we expected more, and I maintain that,
because season 1 was pretty much a home run. Like, there was a couple of weak points in season, but it's like an excellent season of television, and this was, I would say, okay at best is how I would describe this one. All right, Patrick, let's talk a little bit about what the Enclave is doing. All right, and this may involve spoilers for the future, so like if you're really spoiler avoidant, don't listen. But like, I'm going to use some information from the games to try and speculate what's going on. Steph opens Hank's case and says, initiate phase 2. And then we see the Enclave receive that message. And then we hear like voices, disembodied voices initiating phase 2. Now, my understanding is that phase 2 and future enterprise, I'm reading here from a Reddit post about this topic. Phase 2 and future enterprise ventures is definitely about the FEV virus. Because I'm pretty sure this is a writer named Noose Thang. I'm pretty sure that phone call Hank did at the beginning of the season was not with Voltec or Mr. House. He called the Enclave. Infecting the remaining population of the world with FEV and pulling a mass cleanse is the Enclave's end game. And those super managers were, in fact, the possible super mutant soldiers of their plan, end quote. So the idea is that the Enclave apparently seeks to purify the entire human race. Reading here from another Reddit user named Sickels, they believe that everyone who wasn't part of the Enclave is subhuman. Vault dwellers are not Enclave. As such, they are subhuman. It has never been a purity thing, like a blood pure thing, but it's more about who is part of the Enclave and who is not. That's not commenting on the show. That's just commenting on the game. And so if we assume that some of those elements are accurate, part of the show, phase 2 is we're wiping out the human race. And the Enclave is saying, like, the experiment is done. We're killing everyone that's not us. Patrick Klepek, do you think that is accurate? Do you think that might be accurate? What do you think?
Yes, that does feel accurate. And like could be a really interesting villain. It's just I don't see how that fits within the story that you know what I mean? Like what does it have to do with Lucy and Thaddeus? Like I just don't. I feel so off.
Right.
To the side. It is not a it's obviously an insidious and ugly idea with like really gross implications for the world that this is, but what direct impact does that have on Thaddeus, Lucy, or the Ghoul? It doesn't.
Right.
I mean, I'm sure it will. You know what I mean? I'm sure it will. But like television shows are supposed to. It's like one thing if like that's hey, I'm looking at my quest folder in Fallout 5, and it's like, well, I got this main quest, and like it's about the Enclave, and like, ugh, they want to do bad things to the surface. Yeah, but I got all these side quests I want to do first. Like, I'll get to that main quest. Like, I'll get there. Like, this is a television show, and like, it's important that the consequences of those actions feel like they're going to be meaningfully felt by the characters we're invested in. And I think that's a real failure of season 2, especially with this reveal. Like, the reveal is like, oh my god, I can't believe what this means for. But like, what does this mean for any of our characters?
Yeah. I mean, I think that those are great points, Patrick. And I think ultimately at the end of the day, I can't get the image out of my mind of the end of season 1 and the Ghoul heading towards New Vegas. And it's basically the exact same image this season, right? He's like kind of heading to Colorado. And it feels like, and maybe as I've discussed in this podcast, there's some kind of gaming commentary where often you get to the end of the quest and then it's like, nope, you actually have another 500 miles to go. And oh, you actually have another 30 miles to go, whatever it is. But that doesn't make for very satisfying television. And I think,
no.
You get to the end of season 2 and the Ghoul is basically pretty much in the exact same place mentally. Lucy and Maximus are together again, but nothing has changed in their relationship. That is rough, man. It really feels like the season has spun its wheels and not accomplished very much. And that's ultimately the biggest bummer. So anyway,
and that's what the super mutants were also. Water bottle. The super mutants were also. My big water bottle fell over, much like the super mutants who were introduced, and nothing was done with them either, right? Like I'm sure they'll tie into the Enclave because that's the FEV stuff, but
it felt like a lot of fan servicey things.
I gotta say, look, that's the point I'm trying to make. Like ultimately, it's like the first season was so good. I thought about navigating Easter eggs, references, stuff that was like fun as a fan with pre-existing knowledge that would be fun to look up if you or like read an Easter egg guide, if you weren't a fan. But like the jamming in Ron Perlman as a super mutant feels like very indicative of like some of the worst impulses. And maybe that's what you would hope for in the next season, right? Is they haven't started shooting it. They are trying to make these pretty quickly. Like I think like they talked about their writing the next season already. They're shooting it, I think, in the spring, summer, some sort of a timeline like that. So not a ton of time to like take a bunch of
June
feedback.
2027 is when they expect the next season. So
not a ton of time to flip around and take feedback from season 2, but part of what I would hope for is that I think the excitement for season 1 and how good they got it, I think they got a little overindulgent in season 2, and I would hope, and as a good faith criticism would be to pull back on some of that in season 3 to varying degrees. I'm not confident that's going to happen. But stuff like the super mutant introduction here, it's just unnecessary. You didn't have to do it here. It probably would have been more impactful done.
How else was the Ghoul going to get off from that pole, though, Patrick? Anyway, yeah. Uh, Sad note to end on, but we'd love to hear what you think. decodingtv@gmail.com or comment at youtube.com/decodingtv. Let us know, are we too harsh in the season, or did you love this one, and if so, why? Hey everyone, David Chen here. Thank you so much for watching that video from Decoding TV. If you want to get an audio version of the show, all you got to do is go to podcast.decodingtv.com. And if you want to support what we do, get ad-free episodes of the podcast and also bonus episodes of the podcast, go to decodingtv.com and become a paid member. Of course, you can also like and subscribe for more. We appreciate it. Thanks. See you later.